All right, welcome back to Streets and Eats. Today on the podcast, we have two fascinating women, both in the food blogosphere, I suppose you would say, but with strong ties to travel as well. We've got Christina from Christina's Cucina. She's a Scottish-Italian cook living in Los Angeles and really focused on just the purity of cooking. And then we've also got Cynthia from What a Girl Eats, and she's another wonderful cook with a global spin, which, as you guys know, for us, travel is all about the food. Welcome to Streets and Eats, the travel and food podcast dedicated to taking our listeners to the sights, sounds, and flavors of fascinating places near and far, both on and off the beaten path. We're Jim and Corinne Vale, and we've been traveling internationally and domestically together for decades, visiting more than 90 countries in all 50 states in the USA. We'll share all of the local knowledge and food expertise we've gathered through years of living as expats in Asia and Europe, as well as traveling with families spanning multiple generations around the world. Join us each week for a new adventure. I understand you both had the chance and the opportunity to be judges for a tiramisu championship. I have to start with the question that really gets me going when you talk about tiramisu, and that is cooked or raw. Mm-hmm. And I'm talking about the eggs.
You know what? I'll answer that, because when we first joined the tiramisu club and they asked me to do a demonstration for tiramisu, I read through the official recipe. I was like, this is not going to fly in America because it's a raw egg thing. So I actually did a demonstration where I temper the eggs so that you can get around that. So my recipe is a tempered egg recipe. And I've noticed since that a lot of people are now publishing recipes that have tempered eggs. Mm. So, and if you're in Europe, you don't have to worry about that.
How interesting. So we always just use raw eggs.
Yep.
So, I mean, I cook, but when we were in Treviso, each contestant got, you know how you can get pasteurized egg whites here? They had pasteurized egg yolks as well. So if you can get pasteurized egg yolks in a bottle, which I've never seen in the United States, then it would be fine. But personally, I feel more comfortable just tempering my eggs before I make them into the custard.
And I think in the US, if you have your own chickens, you're getting fresh eggs. That's completely different than, the $1.99 dozen eggs that you get from the grocery store. I would never use those raw, but I wouldn't have a problem with. So it's a question of which eggs in the US, I think, for me at least.
Yeah, I've always made them raw, but then we lived in Europe for the longest time and we could get good eggs.
And that's not an issue. It's just not, it's totally different there.
Yeah.
Yeah, the way they handle their eggs is 100% different than the way they handle eggs here.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
So.
And there's so many different types of tiramisu. I mean, to me, there's the classic with the Savoiardi dipped in espresso.
There's 6 ingredients.
Yeah, exactly.
For the original.
There's not a whole lot.
6 ingredients, right? And a lot of people think that alcohol is part of, the original recipe. And while I don't have a problem with alcohol being in, pretty much any dessert, if you're making the authentic original recipe of tiramisu, you don't add alcohol. So, but the Tiramisu Academy, the championship, they're not rigid. I mean, Italians have, a reputation. I'm one of them. I would admit it, of being very rigid with recipes. If you're speaking about the original, I don't think anyone has an issue if you are making something and you do your own riff, or you know how it's made and you decide to change it. Food, it's like language. It's always evolving. I think that the biggest problem is calling something what it's not. So if you're saying this is the authentic tiramisu recipe and you've added rum, that's misleading. It's not truthful. It's just not the case. You're changing history. So, that's the thing with the Tiramisu Academy. They have the competition where it's for the authentic original recipe, but then they have the creative competition where you make it. And what is it, Cynthia? It's the eggs and the mascarpone and the Savoiardi biscuits.
No, you don't have to use the espresso.
A few of the ingredients have to be in there, but then you can do your own twist and make it. And then they have that competition is separate. And that's what we judged.
Well, you judged the creative.
The creative, correct.
But what's
Okay.
interesting about that, the whole thing, is you've made tiramisu and you know how pretty simple it is.
Mm-hmm.
It's amazing. There were like 200 competitors and they all got exactly the same ingredients and they all had to start at exactly the same time and they all had exactly the same conditions. It's amazing how you can get so many different iterations of tiramisu. And like you're thinking, how am I going to judge this if it's all the same?
Right.
And the conditions in the tent it was hot. It was in the 90s.
We actually competed in quotes. We made
Participated.
Participated. That's the word. We participated because they wanted us to know what it was like to be one of the competitors, so that when we judged, we would have that perspective, which I thought was interesting. It was really difficult for us because all these people came locally and had their things to cool the ingredients, and because there were no refrigerators,
Ice chests.
they had all sorts of things, and we were just given the basics, and we'd never used those ingredients before. It was like 80 degrees in the tent, and we were like, oh my God, this is not turning out the way. But the thing that was funny is we were both shocked at, like Cynthia said, everybody starts from the level playing field. The difference even between Cynthia's and mine, when you taste it, it's like, wow, this is unbelievable. So it depends. How long do you soak your biscuits? Do you water down the espresso? Do you do it straight? Do you sweeten the espresso? Because you're allowed to use the sugar.
Well, even with the egg yolks themselves, how long do you cream the egg yolks? That's going to make a difference in the flavor as well.
And remember, they were pasteurized. They were in a bottle.
Right.
And the egg whites too. So you could use egg whites if you wanted to, and which some people did. And some people brought their own mixers and things. And, obviously we were coming with carry-on. We didn't bring equipment, but It was fun.
Okay, so let's go back a little bit and just kind of get into how you got involved in becoming the judges, where it was at, and, just a little bit more of the background of something as fascinating to me as a tiramisu championship. I've never even heard of such a thing.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, Jim, you can participate. You can be one of the
I might
competitors, because it's open right now to sign up, and people do come from all over the world to compete. You just can't be a professional. That's the criteria.
Well, he's not a professional tiramisu maker, so he would never claim to be.
Yeah, they don't want patisserie chefs and people, bakers and people competing. So Ali Gambini is located here in Los Angeles, and she has her own website called A Queen in the Kitchen, and she's another Italian, a strong Italian voice. She's from Italy, and I say she has been in Los Angeles for the last, 10 years or so, a voice for the authenticity of Italian cuisine. And she was connected, and I don't know how she got connected, with the person that's in charge, Francesco Redi, in Treviso, which is the birthplace of tiramisu. And they wanted to do a chapter here in California. So there's a chapter, I believe, in England and Belgium and Brazil and all these places that are representing the Tiramisu Academy. And so they need 3 people to basically have the Academy's chapter in different locations, if I would be one of the people. And I said, absolutely. So I'm kind of like the cultural person, whereas Cynthia was brought on as that they need a technical, like somebody that's trained. So I said, oh, Cynthia's perfect. She's a classically French trained chef. So we had the 3 people, and I believe it was 2020 that it was World Tiramisu Day that they presented us with the certificate saying it's official. We have the California Tiramisu Academy here in Los Angeles. So being part of that, that's how we were invited to go to the Tiramisu Championships last October in Treviso. And we were, brought on as judges, which was, anytime there's anything like that involved, Cynthia and I are happy to.
We've done sorbet judging and
gelato.
It's gelato. Yeah. But what's important to note about the Tiramisu Academy, even though they chose that name, it's not just about tiramisu. It's also about promoting Italian culture and food and preserving it.
Mm.
So
and travel
and the culture and so it's a little bit of everything. They just chose that name, which might be a little bit misleading, but it's not just about tiramisu.
Okay.
It's a good name.
It is a good name.
It's appealing to a lot of people. And Jim, as you're not the only person that has tiramisu is their favorite dessert. It's the most, because it's not that old. It's not that old of a recipe.
Right.
For it to have basically taken over and become so popular worldwide in such a short period of time is really an anomaly. I mean, it's just
pretty incredible.
It speaks volumes about
And I did some research about that because I went to culinary school in the early 80s and I had to take, a week of Italian, a week of Chinese in addition to my French. And I remember thinking, I don't remember ever learning about this dessert. I learned about a lot of Italian cuisine, but I never learned about this dessert. And when I went back and researched it, it was something that pretty much became popular in Italy, like in the 70s. And then it started making its way over, obviously, New York. So it really wasn't part of Italian American cuisine until probably the late 80s.
Mm-hmm.
The late 80s, early 90s, which is why I'd never learned about it before. So it's not a very old dessert.
No, not at all. In fact, we have that on our website from when we learned how to make it. We learned in Sicily, actually, quite a few years ago. And we made it, this lady was making it in the backyard of their restaurant in
I have to ask, did they put marsala in it?
No, they
she
did not
did.
put marsala in there.
Yeah, she did.
We disagree. I told you it was a few years ago.
I'm sorry.
I believe she did.
I believe she did not.
Probably have pictures to prove it.
We probably do.
You have to go back? You're just going to have to go back and... Yeah.
Well, yeah, but it's probably changed by now, But I can remember we lived in Germany in the early 80s, and that's, I think, where I first found tiramisu was in Italian restaurants in Germany.
Mm-hmm.
So it was starting to spread by then. And when I was doing the research for our article on tiramisu, it was extremely hard to find anything, really specific. So I have to say, I think our title is something like Authentic Italian Tiramisu, and it does mention using Marsala wine. So I might have to
I don't think so.
Go back and do some research on that. And
it is delicious. I'm not going to say it's not delicious. It's just not authentic. Because marsala does come from Sicily.
You can't actually get the authentic recipe on the Tiramisu Academy website.
So that didn't exist that's how old the article is.
Correct.
It's time to update it.
The article's old.
Time to update it. Well, and I had when we lived in Turkey, I had an Italian student whose dad was somewhere high up in the Italian embassy for Turkey. And his wife was like a former Italian movie star, and she was super dramatic. And one time,
surprise, an Italian actress.
Yeah. And this one time we had International Day at the school, which was a K-12 school, so all age kids. And she brought in tiramisu, and she kind of sidled right up, way inside my comfort zone, as Italian people often do, and said, "Oh, Jim, my tiramisu is the best, but I put a little bit of wine in it. Is that okay?" I'm like, well, just make sure that the kids know, or that the parents know. It should be fine. It was delicious. I would say it was a little bit more than a little bit of marsala.
But they don't understand, or she didn't understand that. Yeah, just because we're serving it to second graders, why can't you have alcohol in there?
Well, see, but that's the thing. In Italy, serving marsala, for example, to second graders is totally
not
acceptable.
A problem.
Absolutely.
My nonna used to beat, she'd make, we never called it zabaglione. I don't even know what we called it. But she would beat egg yolks with sugar and marsala. And that was my breakfast when I was little. Like, it was no big deal. That was what it wasn't a ton, but there was no
Right.
salad in there.
Right. It's part of the flavor.
Yeah. So, and I was probably 5-6 years old.
Well, we understand because, like we said, we taught in international schools and we've had lots of experiences on both sides of that question. So we've experienced that. Not in a bad way.
So, but I tend to use just a little bit of amaretto in mine because I like the flavor.
I think you need to make Cynthia's recipe.
Oh.
And my version is, so it's completely traditional, except, I follow everything. I don't put egg whites in, but I do a little bit of frangelico, and then I do candied hazelnuts. And I just put a layer of candied hazelnuts in between the first and the second layer. And then I sprinkle some candied hazelnuts on top, and the biscuits are served, have a little bit of frangelico in them.
Nice.
I've tasted it. I give it my stamp of approval.
Good. That sounds good with a little bit of extra texture in there. Yeah. Delicious.
Yeah. I did something similar. I actually won the specialty award for the World Porridge Championship, and it was for sticky toffee porridge, and I did the crunch of candied oats. So it's similar to that, where it's something that's usually very soft, but then you get that crunchy sweet.
That sounds yummy too.
That does sound good.
I'm going to have to look more closely at some of your guys' recipes.
That's
My
right.
gosh.
And Christina's got a limoncello tiramisu.
Oh.
Yeah, that's the one that I have. I need to put the authentic original one on my site, but right now I've got limoncello tiramisu. So it's mascarpone with cream. So it's not anything close to the original because there's not even any coffee. But I was making tiramisu once and I ran out of coffee and I didn't want to brew more. So I thought, what can I do? And I just thought of limoncello. Since, it's like, I probably wasn't even the first person to post it, but there's millions of limoncello tiramisu recipes online now. But it really was like, I just thought, I'll dip it in tiramisu and put lemon with and it's absolutely delicious.
It sounds it. And do you make your own limoncello?
Yes.
Good.
Of course, right?
Well, I've got two Meyer lemon trees here. So
I was going to say around here, you can easily get lemons, I'm sure.
Yeah.
Oh, they're so good. The Meyer lemons are amazing. And I can get the straight alcohol. I either bring it back from Italy, but there's stores here where I can get it's Mexican cane alcohol.
Oh, okay.
Which is what you need to use if you're going to make like a liqueur like that, because if you use vodka doesn't work.
No.
You can do it, but it's just not very good. Everclear has got a horrible flavor to it. Sorry, Everclear, but it's not good for it. So the one that I use just makes the limoncello. My favorite limoncello is the crema di limoncello. I like the creamy one better. I think it's a little more smooth, but I won't say no to
to any of them, right? So what is the type of alcohol that you use again? What'd you call it?
It's like pure alcohol, but the one that I get here, it's from Mexico, and I think it starts with a J. I can't remember the name, but it's half. I think it's half as strong as the Italian one, so you don't need to. You need half as much. You need like one bottle where it would be half a bottle of the Italian pure alcohol. So it's already kind of like basically more usable as it is.
That's good.
Okay.
I think I've got it on my limoncello recipe. I think
I'll have to take a look. But now that we're talking about all the different creative ways, when you guys were judging, what was some of the ones that you thought, wow, I would have never thought of this one?
There's so many.
Well, what struck me is that, these people who've been competing, they brought in stencils and all sorts of little molds and everything, but there were some beautiful pistachio ones. And then somebody did a basilica in cocoa and put the tiramisu on top.
Wow.
It was just very elaborate.
Very creative. Yeah, very creative. And the one that both of us didn't think that we would ended up winning one of I think there was the different, they had different prizes, different awards or whatever. and we both were like, I don't know about that one, just by what we saw going into it, and we both loved it.
And what was that?
It was mint, and what else was in that one? Do you remember?
Yeah, it was an odd combination of ingredients, but it was mint, and I was like, I'm not sure if I'm going to love this.
Yeah, and there was green. It was green, something green on it, and it just visually it didn't look appealing. I mean, it was beautiful the way it was, but the color of whatever it was that was on there, it just kind of like, you know how you eat with your eyes first.
Sure.
I think both of us were thinking the same thing. It looked like kind of like a fake green color, and it was just not appealing. And we tried it, and
Delicious.
it was like, okay, that is really good.
Pistachio or something like that.
Yeah, I don't remember.
How many tiramisus did you end up tasting?
Yeah, tasting.
Well, fortunately, because there were a lot of judges, they kind of broke us into groups. So we didn't have to taste like 100. I think, tasted.
Was it 10 or so?
Yeah. And then we could kind of compile our notes and sort of narrow it down. And then they did a semifinal and a final.
That's not too bad.
And then, of course, when you're in Treviso, there's other places. And then we ended up.
We had tiramisu at every single meal.
Yeah, we had. It wasn't just when we were judging, we were eating tiramisu. But then we went to Le Beccheria, which is where the tiramisu was invented. And we got to try the tiramisu from the original place where it was created, which that to me was amazing.
Yeah, we're always looking for that sort of thing.
We are. That's one of our big
so
things.
So add that to your bucket list.
That's just been added to our list.
Yeah.
Yeah. And the food there is really good too.
Treviso it's only 20 minutes from Venice. So, it's very, and it's cute and very walkable, and it's kind of got a little bit of a Venice feeling with some canals. Yeah, it's a cute little town.
Cool.
We've never
very
been there.
Good food.
It's on our list.
It's on our list now. Like I said, we'll be going to Europe soon.
Near Treviso also, because what was very part of the tiramisu competition is Prosecco, because Prosecco, the Glera grapes, are grown in that region. That's where Prosecco comes from, to get the DOC and DOCG, the good stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So that was La Marca Prosecco was part of the tiramisu competition. So, we actually had a Prosecco tasting.
Nice.
That was hard.
Yeah, right.
I'll bet.
Yeah, all these things we do, it's like somebody's got to
right?
Kind of twist our arm to get us to go to these things.
I just think that's like beyond cool to be able to do something like that. Especially in another country, especially, Italy. People would just die to do that, I think.
I think that's probably the question we get the most. Like, how did you manage that? How do you become a tiramisu judge?
Yeah.
So did it take any politicking, or like you had to meet the right person and say, hey,
well, they had to start a whole organization.
You started the organization there, right?
We were invited as the branch.
I mean, it's an honor to be able to do that.
It really is.
Absolutely.
To be part of the history of the tiramisu, it's just amazing.
Yeah, which, like you said, has a very short history as it is. So every time you can add to it, that's pretty wonderful. I love tiramisu, Jim. Maybe not quite as much as him,
obviously.
But I mean, I don't know, unless you have other things you can tell us about that. How much more we can talk about specifically tiramisu. But are there other types of things that you've done that people might put on their bucket list, i.e. going to?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I was born in Scotland. So one of the things that, and if I can, tell your listeners, anyone that is really into oats and oatmeal and porridge or Scotland, there is a World Porridge Championship. It's called the Golden Spurtle, which the spurtle is what you stir the oatmeal with when you make porridge. This year is the 30th anniversary of this competition. And it's I believe it's the first week of October. And I am going to be a judge this year.
Wow.
For that competition. I won the specialty award in 2014 with the sticky toffee porridge. But absolutely, there's things like this, all over. So if you have a passion for something, I would say go and find where, the competition is, and, put that on your bucket list to compete, because it's honestly, it's something that you will just never forget. Going to another country to compete in a certain dish that you're really passionate about, I think is what's better,
Absolutely. Right. Well, so when you're competing and or judging in these types of things around the world, I mean, was there a language issue? That's what I'm sure is something that people would be interested in, or English to me is one of those languages.
Well, I think there's always a language issue in Scotland with Americans because
I agree.
Always.
I can remember getting off the plane once in Glasgow, and we went to rent a car, and the rental lady said something to us, and we had to ask her at least 4 times what she said.
I was so embarrassed. Yeah.
And all she was asking us, what's your name?
English.
I know. Yes, right. I'm like, I have no idea what you're saying to me.
Well, we had just spent 2 weeks driving around Ireland, and of course, getting used to that.
Yes.
To that tongue. And then, showing up in Glasgow, and I just had to turn around and look at her and say, I'm so sorry. I can't. And she was just asking what our name was. What's your name?
How easy is that? It was
so embarrassing.
No, so I was born there, so I don't really, my dad still has a really, really broad Glaswegian accent. I don't even hear his accent.
Oh.
And they say that Glaswegian is a language in itself, which it pretty much is. If somebody's speaking Glaswegian, and I would say I probably understand 98% of the words, there's probably a few that somebody might throw out there. And I'm like, well, I've never heard that one before. But so for me in Scotland, I don't have an issue. That I used to have the Scottish accent myself. In Italy, everybody speaks Italian or
English. Yeah.
Everybody speaks Italian. Obviously, everybody speaks English.
Okay.
So there's always that's one of the issues I have because I want to practice speaking Italian. But when I go to Italy and they can hear, even if I'm speaking in Italian, they can tell it's not my first, it is my first language, but I have since, not been able to practice. So everybody starts speaking to you in English. Yeah. If they hear that you're not Italian or whatever, and I think a lot of them, they want to practice their English too.
Yes.
So no, I don't think in Italy, and they're so friendly and so warm and, most of the time they were bent over backwards to want to help you and to welcome you. And if you even just say a few words in Italian, they're like, they always tell me, you speak so well, which they're lying through their teeth.
Right.
I know they are.
Right.
But they're so kind to say that,
Absolutely. Well, I guess I was thinking more on a competition type of level. Like, sure, I mean, I'll go anywhere and with hand language and eye rolls or whatever, I can get my point across, no problem. But whether I speak the language or not, mostly it's not, of course. But if I'm competing, I guess, you just want to make sure you're doing it all exactly right. So,
oh, you mean as far as like the rules and everything?
Yeah.
Well, because there are people from all over the world, the main language is, they do it in both English and Italian, because there are people coming from Brazil who speak Portuguese, people who come from Turkey who only speak Turkish. So English is kind of the unifying language. So it's done in both languages.
I see. Okay.
English and Italian.
Yeah. I just think people would be interested to know that if they're going to go out searching for these things and they're like, but I don't speak whatever.
But we can't help you with the Glaswegian, though.
All right.
I'll tell you, it's rough.
But it's actually held in Carbridge. It's not in Glasgow or outside of Glasgow. It's in Carbridge. So it's a tiny, tiny little village, and it's held in the town hall, and they limit the number of participants because it's such a small venue that they can only have so many. So,
well, we might just have to show up there in October and see what's going on.
Yeah.
Jim.
So I was going to ask about spectators. A lot of times I know that in some places when they're having these types of contests, it's like attached to a festival of some sort. So for spectators, there's something to do because you're at a festival, but then you can kind of pop in and see what's happening in the contest as well. Is it set up like that at all? Is it something spectators
Treviso,
would be?
we were surprised at how many spectators there were. Right, Cynthia?
Yeah, hundreds. And for the finals, people were jammed in, and the news. There was there were news reporters from all over Europe. It was kind of crazy.
BBC was there. Yeah,
it was kind of crazy how many journalists were reporting on this event, and we were like, "Oh, this is interesting."
and this is really funny. one of my relatives, like a second cousin, they were down in Sicily on holiday, and I guess they were in a bar, and the news was on, and I got a Facebook message like the next day, and this distant relative said, "Call me crazy, but were you were you in Treviso in a tiramisu contest or something like that? Like last night, I could have sworn that was you on TV." And I, wrote back and I was like, "Yeah, that was me." And they're like, "What?"
That is crazy. Wow. Okay, so we got to go to the Porridge Festival, Tiramisu Festival. What other festivals do you know about?
There's the Scotch Pie Competition.
What is Scotch Pie? Enlighten me.
You guys have been to Scotland, right?
Many times.
Well, you said you did.
Yeah.
So you know the round pies?
Oh, okay. You just made a pie, like meat pie, fish pie.
Meat pie.
Yeah.
Right. A meat pie.
It's the meat pie. It's round and it's got a little like rim, and then there's a hole in the middle. And
cylindrical.
It's like pie and beans. You can get it, in pubs, and butchers sell them. They have a Scotch Pie Competition. I believe it's in November. I was a judge there maybe 5 years ago.
That's a contest I can get behind.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I'd love to taste those pies.
Yeah. I've
I've
always been kind of bummed that America never really embraced meat pies in general. We have chicken pot pie.
Isn't that crazy?
Yeah.
That's it.
Yeah.
But there's such good savory pie out there.
Oh, absolutely. And for varieties and sausage rolls and all those kinds of things. And I mean, they're popular in Australia too.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
But they just, I don't know why they haven't really, I think people here would know like a Cornish pasty, what it is, or maybe they've heard of it. But again, it's like, why don't we have, why hasn't it taken off here?
It might be making some inroads because in Astoria, Oregon, there is a food truck there that specializes in Cornish pasties.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
One of the best Scotch pies I've ever had was made by an American. And he was based here in California. I think he's since moved up to Seattle, but he competed in the Scotch Pie Competition in Scotland, I believe, maybe 4 or 5 times. And I honestly, his Scotch pies have blown some of the ones that I've tasted from Scotland out of the water. They were just, and he would go to all the, like the Renaissance fairs and the Scottish festivals and things like that around California, the West Coast, but they were so good. I think I bought like 50 once from him.
Wow. So in many meat pies, they use lard, right? For the fat. But I don't know anymore if they still are doing that in Britain. I mean, I go back and visit, but I don't know if they're still using lard. I use it when I make things. I think Americans,
that's a flavor.
It is. It's definitely a flavor, and I think Americans shy away from using lard. And I think
it's starting to come back a little bit. I think, don't you think, Cynthia? A little tiny bit.
Well, I think as people sort of stop being afraid of saturated fat, it'll start coming back, hopefully.
Well, we did have quite the campaign against saturated fat for many, many decades. So. And
I think it's coming back the other way. I think people are finally realizing saturated fat is not as bad as.
Well, when you see pictures and videos of like in the early 1900s of wherever, and when that's all that was used was things like lard, and you do not see anyone that was overweight then.
Right. That's true.
Well, they did have to work harder then too.
But they did. That's the thing. They did. But even like like think about like the Downton Abbey, situation where they were still eating like food that was made using those ingredients, and they weren't out working in the fields.
Yeah, that's true.
Well, I agree with you. I mean, I think lard is A, delicious, and B, especially for something like a savory meat pie. I mean, to me.
And lardo in Italy, I mean, you just slap it on a piece of bread, and I mean, that's heavenly. Heavenly. They do it in well, you guys know, in Germany, and
Well, we just came from Vietnam, and Vietnam is not known for having heavy food like you would say Germany or other parts of Europe and stuff. In fact, their food is very light. But we took a cooking lesson just a couple of weeks ago, and she brings out this slab of pork fat. She goes, I just bought this morning at the market. I know you Americans don't like it. I said, no, I love it. She goes, but we have to use this because we like the flavor. I said, yeah, I get it. So,
well, pork belly is become,
true.
very popular.
Yeah, that's very true. But it was just so funny because, you think of Vietnamese food especially, and you think it's and it is healthy for you. And it's, but at the same time, they've got the lard in there, let me tell you.
But to me, see, that's an argument that other people, they would say, I say lard is healthy. As long as it comes from a pig that is raised humanely and is not given all sorts of, antibiotics and things, and it's given, then it's healthy.
Right,
but if you've got some, pig farm where they're given, just packaged whatever, and they're given all sorts of chemicals to, we've got to give them medicine so that they don't get this or that, then it's not going to be healthy because what they eat, you're going to ingest.
Needs to be as natural as possible. That's what I think.
Right.
Well, probably one of the best meals that I think Christina and I ever had together is we went to Antica Corta Pallavicina, and it was like 2019, and they have the most beautiful culatello, and Christina's like, you need to try this place. And what's different about how Italians treat their food, just from the way Americans treat their food, is they're so respectful of the animal. They respectfully raise it, and when it's time to slaughter the animal, they say a little prayer over that animal, and they thank the pig for giving its life. And you can see there's a genuine respect for the animal that I don't think we have. And that meal, the culatello, which is like high end, really high end prosciutto. It's where Prince Charles has his pigs sent for
cured
to be cured. But I think the way the Italians respect the food from farm all the way to table is just so different. And it sort of, I guess, takes away the guilt for me when I'm eating a delicious meal.
I feel the same way. It's like I won't eat veal in the US. I just won't do it. But, in Europe where the animals are treated so much better, it's different there. Mm-hmm. And, this place, it's just like a heavenly retreat to go there, and you could stay, it's like a relay. Yes. And so that you drive in, and there's the white oxen there, and they've got the garden, and everything comes, from either on site or locally. And I mean, it's just, the food is at such a level of quality that it's off the charts compared to what we have.
It's like night and day.
Yeah. I think in Asia, it's the same way. I think there's just a different level of respect for the animals that are giving their lives for the food.
In some parts of Asia, I would agree with that. Yeah. Maybe not all parts of Asia. But Jim and I visited a farm in Switzerland. And we were staying at a kind of a B&B place. And her husband, the lady who owned it, she made amazing food. And so we, of course, were just discussing the cheeses and the beef that she was using and the lamb that she was using. And she goes, oh, it comes all from my husband's farm. So we're like, we start talking to her, and they invite us to the farm for milking at 6:00 in the morning. And of course we say yes. And I have never been to a farm that treats their animals like this man treated his animals. It was, like you said, it was almost like a resort for animals. They had massages.
As it should be. Yeah.
Absolutely. And it was just, and you could tell the animals loved him and he loved them. And it was such a.
And the thing is too, using the nose to tail.
Yeah, absolutely.
They don't throw, it's so respected after it's been slaughtered too, because it's like, we just killed this animal. You can't throw parts of it away. Here's an example. I went to Whole Foods here in Pasadena, And I was looking for like pork belly pancetta that had the skin on it. It's really hard to find. And I want, good quality pork. And I said, can you get the pork belly that has the skin on it? Because always the skin's been removed. And what I was told was we had to stop selling that because people were offended to see the skin. So it's okay. It's better to make people happy because they don't want to see something and throw it away, or I don't know what they do with it. I would assume that they maybe throw it away. Instead of being respectful and like even keeping it in the back and saying, we have it, for sale, just ask. Or it's so frustrating to me because I don't think you should be throwing away parts of the animal. There's ways to use it, in so many different ways. I mean, one of my favorite foods of all time, if you ask me, like, what's your favorite food? One of my favorite foods is black pudding. Now, you cannot convince a lot of people to even try it. I understand it. Right. I totally understand. If I wasn't brought up the way I was brought up, I'd probably be the exact same way. So I'm not judging and saying
you should like it.
But it's sad that because I love it so much. I always want to share what I love with other people and have them experience what. So how can they do that if they never try it?
And I think you're right. I think it's a mind question, right? Because to know that it's a blood pudding that, but it tastes delicious. I mean, my gosh, it is so good. I did have a black pudding soup one time. I was not thrilled with that because of the little,
oh no,
yeah, that
does not sound,
that didn't
sound
settle
appealing.
Well with me.
Where was
that? In Germany.
Yeah. It was a soup that had black pudding in it. So it was like little bits of it. And just in a
tiny bits. But black pudding is, part of a breakfast is delicious. I love that. And especially in Scotland, we've had it many times. I think we've had it more in Scotland than we have in England. And I think it's England,
more so it is more popular in Scotland. Yeah. And I tried a black pudding from England one time that I took one bite and I threw the whole thing away. And that's, for me to throw something away, it's got to be really bad because I just don't want to waste food. But it was like, no, this is like cannot be ingested by any human. This is just horrible. And then I did try French black pudding, boudin noir, I think they call it. That was just way too soft for me. And it
was a texture thing.
Like,
that's usually what gets me is the texture.
And I was just like, I don't think I can do this. It was just,
I haven't had many times when I haven't been able to eat something. And as we raised our kids overseas and eating foods from all over the world, we always had the rule, just try it once. You don't have to like it because everybody's not going to like everything. You don't even like, what everything mom makes. So you don't have to like everything, but at least give it a good try. And I wish that other people sort of had that philosophy. It's like, just try it. You don't have to eat it. You can be respectful and leave it on your plate. Always take a little bit. Don't take this huge portion until you know what you're.
But I think my background's in psychology, and I think it's true that the whole picky eating is not about food. It's about the power struggle and children asserting themselves. And basically a lot of parents just don't want to do what's necessary to, like not getting off on a whole nother tangent. But I remember one time I think he was I don't know if he was a child psychologist. He said the way to get around the picky eater situation, because it's rampant in like Britain and the US and Canada, where the rest of the world, there are no picky eaters.
That's right.
I mean, like the children just grow up eating what the parents eat, and it's not an issue. You don't chasing a child around with a spoon of yogurt to try to get them, He said the rule should be that the food should sit on the plate. There's no rule that they have to try it. It just needs to sit there, period. With that, you've taken the power struggle out of the equation. And they said, children, by the second or third time that let's just say, for example, peas. You don't have to eat the peas, but they have to sit on your plate. So the peas sit on the plate. And by, say, the second or third time that the peas have sat on the plate, the curiosity gets the better of the kid. And it's of their own volition that they are trying the peas. And so, do you know that? And I hate peas. I mean, I was born in Scotland. Everybody's still they blow their mind.
Complicated. That's too complicated for me. I just said, if you don't like what we're eating, you can eat again tomorrow.
That's the old-fashioned way. That's the old-fashioned way. And a lot of people don't want to do that. They feel it's too harsh, whatever. But I think if
I don't think anybody's died from missing a meal.
No, it's they haven't. But why not do that instead of saying, letting the child say, no, I don't want it. And they throw a temper tantrum, and you reward that behavior by giving them what they want, by not having it on their plate or whatever.
I think a lot of that is also having picky parents.
That could be.
Because I've noticed that picky children usually have picky parents. I'm not really crazy about this, so my kid isn't either. Okay, well.
Yeah, there's an awful lot of adults that won't try things too. That's for sure.
Right.
When I married into Jim's family, his dad used to say, Jim doesn't like chicken. Jim doesn't like mushrooms. Jim doesn't like eggs. Jim likes all of those things.
I eat everything.
But
Jim's dad didn't like them.
That's exactly right. That's exactly right. It's just kind of funny. But anyway, my kids grew up, our children grew up eating things from all over the world. And I've noticed, like you just said, how the pickiness does seem to be much more of maybe I would say a Western culture type of.
Oh, it's they've done studies, and it's like data is like all over with the number of picky eaters that, and I mean, childhood obesity here is, and diabetes and all it's rampant. I mean, I don't know what percentage, the last thing that I heard, it's so sad because the children don't have a choice. They're not going to the grocery store or choosing the restaurant to eat. They are basically at the mercy of what their parents are doing. So if the parents are like, oh, we're just going to have McDonald's because that's what my kid, at least they're eating.
Right.
At least they're eating. That's what Cynthia had pointed out, something that people were discussing this in a Facebook thread. And they said, well, they're not eating well, but at least they're eating. Well, to me, I'd rather that they didn't eat the food that is really, and have them get hungry so that they'll eat something that is nutritious.
Yeah. Something that's
healthy, they need it for their brain, for, they're growing. They're not like you and me where we only grow sideways at this point,
Well, like you said, that's really a discussion for another
day. That's a whole podcast in and of itself.
We definitely always have tons of opinions on that. I think it's just fantastic that you guys have been able to really spread your wings and be able to go to different places and enjoy the food there, and not just enjoy it, but sort of learn really enough about the culture to be judges. To me, that's just, it might be a goal of mine now.
Yeah, that's pretty amazing. So is there anything on the horizon for both of you? Any more judging coming up?
I would like to go back to Treviso in October. I'm not sure if Christina can tag that on after Scotland. Or...
Yeah, I have the competition in Scotland, the Porridge competition that I'm judging. I think it's October 6th, I want to say, the first Saturday in October.
We'll have to see if that can coincide.
Yeah, it's up in the air right now, so I'm not sure. But
and when is the Treviso competition?
I think it's that same weekend.
I think it's the same weekend. So we might have to divide and conquer.
Wonderful.
52 weeks of the year, and both are the same weekend, isn't that?
Yeah,
Murphy's
that's
Law.
crazy. That's the way it works out, though. Well, I've had a really good time talking with you guys, or you ladies, sorry.
That's fine.
We'll definitely get together and maybe host you in another podcast at some point in time. We'd like to really dig into all of the Scottish food and travel that you've done. That
any
really
food
sounds
and
like
travel. It's not just Scottish, but that too. But yeah, if anything, this is our love, as you can tell. I mean, this is one of the reasons that we have a podcast and we have our travel blog, is that we travel to eat.
Well, you guys have made me envious. All the places that you've been. I have never been to Asia, South America, tons of places. But the problem is I keep going back to Europe.
Yeah.
And I did hard. mostly Asia when I went around the world on my honeymoon.
Mm-hmm.
So we concentrated everything in Southeast Asia, India, Australia, New Zealand, China, just because I figured Europe would be easy. So
right. And it is.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, again, thanks for joining us.
Thank you.
Thank you for having us.
You're welcome. All right. Thanks for listening to this episode of Streets and Eats. If you liked what you heard, please show us some love, hit the like button, and leave us a review. Maybe even subscribe so you don't miss any future podcasts. Also, we'd love it if you joined us on our Facebook private group, Streets and Eats, where we just have an ongoing conversation about all things travel. Ciao for now.